All right. A good day to all. Sam here with you on Friday, June 15th. And if it's Friday, that means it's a Bitcoin Friday. So we're going to try something a little different today. I'm going to take, we're going to, my partner and I, Quan, are going to split up here our analysis. I'm going to give you the bullish perspective as I remain an optimistic bull. How about I say it that way? And Tyke's going to give you his view, which is somewhat different than mine, and that's I think a positive thing. So just because we're partners, we don't always share the same view, and that's kind of it depends on how you look at it, right? So one of the things that's interesting about technical analysis, and particularly when we're working with Elliott Wave, is that it can be interpreted in multiple ways. So eventually there will be clarity and it won't be in dispute. But right now it's very much unclear as to where we are in this broader count. So as traders, what can we do? What do we do about that? Well, of course, if you're uncertain and uncomfortable, safest place to be is on the sidelines. You do not have to be in the market. And often no trade is the best trade. If you have a bias, as I do, I'm certainly the reluctant bull here, despite this very protracted correction that we've been experiencing since the first of this year. Well, you look for those opportunities where you might have a potential pivot, a significant pivot that can mark the market's bottom, the end of this correction. Could be a significant opportunity. If you're a cautious bull, the other scenario is to simply wait for more confirmation of the pivot rather than trying to pick the pivot low. So I would tell you, if you're not in the market, the more conservative and safest way to approach it now is to wait for some confirmation, and we don't really have it yet. So this is analysis that I'm going to give you today that is fully aware and fully conscious of my bullish bias. I'm a long-term bull. Do we have the ingredients here for a potential pivot that could be significant? Well, it's certainly possible. Certainly possible. But the bull case is weakening, and we are pretty much at our last stand for the bullish scenario here that this correction is approaching its end. And we have the possibility of starting a new trend. So we're going to dig into that. So what I thought I would do here first is just take everything off the chart and just look for the obvious support and resistance in the market. So looking here, we can see, again, the idea being, what can we be definitive about? What can we say that is clear and is not in dispute? Wave counts, always potentially alternate counts. Very often multiple counts. There can be dispute about what you see. Right? So either you revel in that intellectual challenge, or you think that it's a waste of time. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. I'm just going to build a case here for the bullish side of Bitcoin because that's where I stand, and you can make the case that what a bull believes he sees. So let's try and be objective about the bullish scenario here as best that I can. And take a look at this. Now, here it is, just no Elliott Wave, no fib pulls, not just where's the support, where's the resistance. Well, it's pretty objective here that we can make a case here. We've got some pretty significant resistance here we're going to have to work through should we start to rally higher again. And we're approaching now what is pretty substantial support. We've come a little shy of the obvious level of support. Now, what I would do in here is I would draw kind of a warning zone. So I'm going to take my current low down here that we've just hit, and I'm going to pull it to this, and I'm going to draw this over. So I call this kind of a warning zone, if you will. Here's the longer term, and all I'm doing is taking the pivot to the pivot and then just drawing that across. Same thing here. So we're certainly approaching this longer term support, and just for round numbers, we're going to call it 6,000. Pretty substantial correction. Now, one thought is you work backwards from the absolute low and try and figure out, is this a 3? Is this a 5? Is this a 1? Are we putting in a 2? Some of the price action here is making it more and more difficult to consider this as a 2. although I'm going to try and make that case, because of what is now starting to look more and more like a triangle. Well, if we're going to be consistent with our Elliott wave application here, we have a very hard rule that we cannot have a triangle in the second wave. And this price action here, more indicative of the kind of thing you would see in a fourth. So, and with that said, and in the back of my mind, can I build a case here for this to be playing as the top of the one, and this is all somehow just a very long, protracted second wave, with the potential for the 3, 4, and 5 yet to come. Now, we can eliminate that possibility if we take out this low. All right, so in the simplest of analysis here, and we'll get to this in a second, but if we just to make this point, if we take out this low, we no longer can look at this as a one. Pardon me. That this is completed the one wave, and we're in the process of putting in the two. So if we take out this low here, we've got to reconsider where a bull can find a count that works. Still, it could be a fourth, right? Still could be a fourth. I think that's less likely, but we're going to see. We will eventually. That's one of the good things about this type of analysis. Eventually, the market reveals itself. So looking here, just getting a sense of this as we approach this. Again, I would tell you this. It's hard to argue with this as long-term support. We can make a case that this 6,000 level has been tested repeatedly, and it's being tested again. Well, is there an Elliott count here that can accommodate this? Well, what's the simplest thing? What's the simplest way that I can approach this with my Elliott hat on? Well, allowing for this as a significant pivot, we do get we've been through this before, right? So just to make the case, if anyone's watching for the first time here, this is hard to argue with, right? That's pretty classic three-wave B. We come down, we get 5. Hard to argue with that. So some sort of significant pivot. Is it a 1? Is it a 3? Well, whatever it is, we finish some sort of a trend here, and we start our correction. So we get just a textbook ABC. Down we go. So what can this be? Well, if that's my C wave here, is it possible here that I just have the simplest thing that I could possibly lay out with my Elliott hat on? Could this be 1 and this be 2, 3, 4, and 5? Is that possible? Well, until this low is violated here, that remains a possibility, right? That's a pretty, and then if we carry that forward, then we'd do something. There's two counts here that allow for this, but then we'd look something like that. All right, so we'd have with that 2 out of there. Let's get that down there. So the potentially here, let me raise that degree here so it's easier to see. We'll go to subminuet. All right, so is that crazy? Is that totally unrealistic? It's a stretch, right? So as long as we don't violate this pivot low, it remains a possibility. It is possible, right? So as long as this low holds and we don't breach it by a single tick, it's a contender. This could just be in the simplest fashion, although we've had certainly a lot of complexity going through here. I'm going to take this off just so it's easier to see. Get rid of that. ABC. It's certainly possible. Right? Now we're going to know, and we'd like to think that if that's going to hold in the bullish camp, that this would be a significant pivot, and that to come out of this, we've got to get a motive wave. We can get a diagonal, we can get an impulse, but we got to get 5 to come off of that to substantiate the idea here that I have a potential pivot after this ABC. Now, we don't have good fib support for that if I look down here. So you see, yes, we go right to the golden zone. Here's our algo target down here, but that would be below this low. So, that's you got to be conscious of that if you're trying to work on the bullish side of it here on the assumption that I've got a significant pivot here. So we have to qualify that pivot. But we certainly can't turn a blind eye to the fact that we have an algo target down here at 51.75. So we've got to be aware of that. Now, just because there's an algo target there does not mean that that must go there. But it certainly could go there when look for a reaction there. That invalidates this count as a 1, right? As I've Tried to emphasize here. But right now, that still is a contender for just a very complex long ABC. Pivot is going in, and we have the potential for this to start a new trend or the third wave of whatever degree this ends up being. So that's a very real possibility. As long as this low holds. Now let's go break that down a little bit. So let's go over here. This is, let's see, where do I want to look at this? So here it is on the 12-hour. Now we're gonna break this down in a little more detail, but here's now starting to flesh that out. Do I have the ingredients here? Well, there's the toughest part is this B wave here, because this is such a clear 5. So if you're going to get a 3 wave out of this to allow for a B, we have to allow for this very short C wave relative to the length of the A. Now, does it happen? Sure, of course. You can find examples of this. It's unusual for the C wave to be that short, but you can get a count there that works. Are we forcing the bullish counts? Possible. Possible could be forcing that count. But again, right down to the tick, yes, it's a potential B wave. It can be. We do have the possibility here. We don't violate any Elliott wave rules there. We're not in sync with tendencies. Tendencies for the C to be much longer, but it does not violate any rule set. Now, it gets much tougher coming down here. This is where it gets very difficult, and I think all of us are having trouble getting a reasonable count on this. And certainly anyone with a bullish bias is struggling to get a bull count here. Now you can see the median lines here. Good sport. We do not make the pivot down here. We do not make the median line, I should say. So this coming just a little shy of it. Well, one of Andrew's trading principles is that a failure to make the median line implies strength. Now this is awfully darn close. Now it looks closer here on a 12-hour than it will on a 1 hour or a 15-minute, but it's pretty darn close. Now, if we're going to fail to reach it, and interestingly, tapping it would be it would be a double bottom right into that low. Interesting. But if we're going to come shy of it, that would suggest strength in the market. So failure to reach the median line would set us up for this potential third up here. So if this is 1 ABC into a 2, we'd be breaking. We're going to need to break through all that resistance going back up. So let me break this down in a little more detail. So here it is. We can see it a little bit better. So I'm down to a 1 hour. All right. So let me get this so where you can see it. All right. So the assumption is, again, back to this to that simple explanation. Here's my pivot low. You can see how close we've come to it on the 1 hour. So we'd have to allow for this to be a 1. And yes, you can get a count out of that. It gets a little squirrely here, but you can get a 1 wave out of that. Now it looks pretty good coming down. So if I look here and say, if this is my 1 wave, I'm getting a very deep 2. Well, first thing to take note is look how, if that is a 2, if that ends up being the count that the market reveals, if that's a 2, well, note how far that 2 goes relative to that 1, which makes you think, well, wait a minute, it's done it before. There's a 2 almost. I'm coming very close to overlapping, and then here's a potential 2 doing the same thing down here. And you'll recall from the pull at the B high, this was a double top into a 50% retracement. But now that has the algo target down at 3,200, which I've shown many times. But if this is a 1 and that's a 1-2 coming down, well, it plays pretty well actually. So if we look here, you can see here's our high probability zone for our I don't like that color, for our third wave here, right in the pocket, 1618175. We come a little shy of it here. So that looked like, it looked like maybe that was 3, 4, 5. But if I look here, now note I get from this 2, if I get my 2 to, if that's my 3 low right into that, well, that's right where you'd expect it. Now look, we come a little shy of it here. Now I couldn't help but notice that looking here, look what we get over here. Right? Is this impulsive move down here in this third wave here, we go to the tick to the 618, and then we've just gone a couple of ticks through the algo target. It gets my attention, right? That's to the tick. So the implication would be that the algos did not take profit here, and they just waited, resold it here. Now they catch that. It's possible. All right, but let's stay with this count here just for a second. So let me take that off. Come here. There we go. Okay, so if that's if we allow for this as a 3, 4, 5, that gives us everything that we need and all the subdivision to give us an A wave. So it's there. Now, taking that off, if I allow for that as an A wave, well, then here's where I get that, that difficult B wave here, because I've got to get an A wave here. Here's my clear 5 off that low. Clear impulsive way. Kind of a funky B, but it's there, A, B, C. We got to allow for a truncation in the C of the B. Then we do get a good clear 5 up into that C. That would have to be our B wave. No other way we can count that makes sense. Well, now coming down, here's where it's gotten difficult. This is what's making it so tricky here, is because we have an absolutely textbook perfect 5 wave coming from this pivot right here. So if I outline this here I'm over here on Bitfinex. So that's 88.85. From that low, I get an absolutely perfect 5 wave. Well, what makes that difficult for an Elliott trader is what to do with this. Can I get the only way I can get this count to work if I dig into every single pivot? There's a very clear 5 down here is a potential 1 wave. I've got a good 2. Now, if I measure it, which you would want to do, of course. So if I take that as my 1, that is my 2. Well, my 3rd here, I do get past 100%. So I'm longer than my first wave. So it qualifies. But that would mean I've got an ABC into a 4 into this pivot here at 88.85, and then I've got to allow for a pretty substantial extension in the 5th. Do I love that count? No, I don't. But it's there. Again, I can't disqualify it because it doesn't break any rules. I don't love the symmetry of the 1 through the 3 relative to the 5th. So it becomes, yet again, so here's I guess I'll make the point here for you. So if I work from that 88.85 and I take my 1 wave and I go to my 2, right? I go right into the pocket here for my 3rd, right? As you see, just as we consistently demonstrate here, that's the high probability zone for my 3rd between 1618 and 175. So if this is a 1, 2, that's boom, right into the pocket. So I like that. Well, if that's good for me, then, well, I'm going to look at the 2 relative to the 4. So if I pull now from my 2, my proposed 2 to my 3, well, here's my 4 actually over here on the right to the 50. Well, I get my first little reaction here. So here's clear algo activity, right? So they front run the 50 right to their a little hover here. So that's profit taking. Then you get the last drive down. Well, so what do they get? They get a couple of ticks from their second target. So from here, so their trade algos catch this, right? They get it here, keeps going, they get the second target. So that's potentially, now we've got a very clear impulse wave to finish this as a 5. But you got to go from this low, we got to work backwards. So that's the cleanest way I can count that, allowing for this short 3 and a pretty substantial extension, the 5th. The symmetry I don't love, but there it is. And I can see this technical action working off of this pivot. So I'm sure I'll get comments from people telling me how crazy that is, and I got it all wrong. That's fine. I mean, the idea is idea exchange here, right? It's not me telling you what to do or what's happening. This is what I see. Well, if you see something differently, well, good for you, man. Go trade it. But from here, I see a clear 5. So then you got to look at it and say, well, what else could it be? What else could it be? Well, I'm going to go over here and say, well, this was an alternate that we looked at. So just to clarify, so this would be a 2 wave. So let me pull this back out here so you can see it. So if I go to a 3 hour, so you can see that. So the assumption would be that I've got, back to my simple count, 1, 2, ABC gives me that 2, right? Working from the high. So that's the assumption here. If this is an A, B, C, I got a 1 and I've got a very long ABC. Now again, as long as that low holds, we are in an internal correction. That pivot has not been, this pivot not violated. So it's a contender. So is it the simple version, ABC's in, I got a 1, I got an ABC. That's the simple version. Slightly more complexity. Well, I'm coming from this pivot, I've got an ABC. I could count this as potentially an ABC into an X wave. So I get a W, X, and then I finish with an ABC. Difference being, if this is ABC, am I calling this 1 ABC, or is this ABC starting a W into an X and then finishing with an ABC? Also possible. So you can't eliminate either possibility. You can't eliminate them. So when in that scenario here, all you can do is say, well, you got to pick one. What's the simplest? What's the simplest explanation? Well, all we've done is an ABC, and it's a 1-2. That's the simple explanation. So I'm going to stick with that until this low. If and when that low is violated, then we'll recount it and reconsider what else could be going on. Now we're going to need to come off of this low with some juice. We're going to need volume. We're going to need an impulsive move at some point here for this to resolve and add confidence to that low. We don't have it yet, but there's some setup there. So I'm going to come back over here. So here's the 3. I'm going to go down to the 15 minute. I'm going to go really short time frame. Let me get out of log scale. Let me get that. So here's my significant pivot. Here's the pivot that cannot be violated to allow for this as a 2. Well, what do I have here? So it's unresolved, right? So it could be A, B, C. Right? That's possible. Implying one more move lower. Come here. Implying we're going down. Now we could double bottom. It's possible. We could double bottom. But if there's another kick on it and we break that low again, the whole count changes. Now, what's an alternate? Could this be a motive wave in the midst of just getting started? Well, I can probably get a 1, 2, 3, 4. I overlap the 1 here, so I've got a potential. If I count it out this way, I could get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's it's not gorgeous. It's not gorgeous. It's a little problematic here if we really dig into it, because we've got, this looks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This looks more impulsive. So if I look at that, right, as we know, we can't have an overlap with an impulse. So I'd have to count this as some sort of an ABC. So I suppose we could do it this way. So here's another contender. This could be our 3 here, and we've got a 4 here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's shit, I can't get that either. Hang on. Thought maybe I had a contender, but so this would have to be our 1. It's the depth of this, so that can't fly actually either. So we could possibly do it this way, where we'd have an ABC truncation, an expanded flat. We could potentially have that. All right, it gets a little tricky down here. So ABC, AB, get an expanded flat here. AB down for the C. That puts in our 5. Well, a little bit of a stretch, but it's there. We got to allow for this abnormality. Abnormality may be the wrong word. It's not typical. It's atypical. But we see these expanded Bs relatively frequently. So let's think about that. Well, what are some of the tells that we could use there? Well, from this low here, if we've got a diagonal, there's often a relationship between the 3 relative to the 4, and it's commonly retraced to the 50. Well, here's 50 damn near to the tick. So this potentially now, if we can allow for that, which we can. So from that 3 low, so in a diagonal, we take the start of it to the 3 high, look for a relationship here at the 4. That's a perfect algo trade right there. Just boom. Did they get their target? Algos, they get paid. All right, so potentially now from that 50, they're 2 target here. And now we're just correcting. So if we allow for that as a completed 5th, well, what are we looking for in a second? Well, let's go up a degree. We can go to white here. We'll go from this low. Is that potentially a 1? We know a 2 from the 50 to 786, sweet spot between the 50 and the 618. So let's use our 1 high there. All that could be coming higher. Let's go up a degree. Some sort of a correction's underway. Is that the pivot low? We don't know yet. Might be. Remember, I'm down here on a 15-minute where it can get a little squirrely. So if we're going to start to move higher now, that would add some credence and credibility to the idea that this pivot down here could be a significant low. Right now, no way to really call that. No way to call it. I've got the ingredients here for kind of an ugly 1, but there it is, right? And, as we battle here to potentially establish a trend, with some good news coming into the market that could be causing some of this. It's a contender. This could be it. 1, 2, up we go for it. So how do we know? Well, again, you're looking for tells. That's all you get, tells and probabilities. So if that were going to play as a 3, we got to see some pretty good action here in this third. All right, so 1, 2, we're going to look for that third. So we know the negative 100 will be very close to the 1618. So I've got, let's see if we've got a pitchfork here that'll play one. Now that's, we don't know that's our hard pivot for a 2, but that's a possibility. So let me go back to original on that. Well, if that low holds there, right? Here's your corner pocket. Right, you got 80% probability of getting there. If on the assumption that low holds as a 2, so often you'll see the reaction here at the median line with the algo target. That sets up the potential 3, which could lead to something along those lines. Right, so that could be your roadmap to get there. And again, there's time variables here, and some of this that could all go out like that. Something along those lines. So if we can get this pivot to hold here, that's a reasonable roadmap to get us up to a 3, 4, and 5. And then we're getting some distance and we're getting some structure to support this as a significant pivot. We're not there yet, but that's kind of interesting. So it's not a golden corner pocket, but we've got just a potential front run on the 50 right to an algo target. So that being 68, 80, 88, that's a contender. So it all comes back to, can we start to get some distance from this low? Can we start moving from that? I think it's certainly a contender, right? So for bulls, they're looking for qualification of that pivot. There's some good indication that we have a contender down here. You could in effect call this just a triple bottom. And traditionalists are going to be drawing trend lines here, which nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with that. So they're looking at that going, okay, well that descending triangle here. If we get some legs coming out of there, well, this thing could so here's the obvious resistance we got to get through, but if we can get going, it's a contender. So it would not be uncharacteristic of Bitcoin. If you go back and look at the 2s, they've all been either very shallow or very deep. There have been very few just textbook right to the 618 boom reaction. They've been difficult 2s. It's Bitcoin's personality seems to be, at least in 2018, difficult 2s, very deep 2, very deep 2. Maybe. Right, and then the difficulty of discount coming through here. So it's not easy trading in anywhere in crypto right now. Right, it was part of why we would encourage you, if you're just frustrated and just uncomfortable in crypto, you don't need to be a crypto only trader. Trading is trading, and analysis is analysis. So if you don't like what you're seeing in the crypto space, diversify. Look at some futures. We regularly now doing videos on other assets that we would encourage you to consider. If you don't like what you see in crypto, that doesn't mean you stop trading. If you're a trader, it's where is their volatility? Where is their movement? Where is their good technical price action? Right? Lots of opportunities, lots of markets where you can apply this methodology with more clarity. If you're where we started, if you're unclear, why are you trading? If you're uncomfortable, you're not sure, I don't know, why are you in the market? Regardless of the asset class. If you've got conviction, if you're a long-term bull, if you're a crypto believer, as I am, I constantly look for a pivot to qualify as a contender for a buying opportunity, because in my view, this will be child's play relative to where Bitcoin's going 3, 4, 5 years from now. Could that be the 2018 low? Yeah, could be. Could be the last time you'll ever see Bitcoin, around 6,000. But then there are plenty of people tell you it's going to 1,500. No shortage of people saying it's going to 0. So you gotta pick a side. You gotta, if you're a bear, well, you got, as Quan is gonna take you through the bearish view. Plenty of technical analysis to suggest that there are patterns here and wave counts that would suggest much lower prices. So you kind of pick your side and say, am I willing to put capital at risk to support that bias. Otherwise, it's all talk, and talk is cheap. I'm in. I'm long. I haven't sold any. So at least for what it's worth, I put my money where my mouth is. All right. Well, you can look forward to Kwan's video to follow mine. So we kind of like this idea of doing a bull-bear count, and we'll probably stay with that. And it gives you some things to think about. All right, so with that, I will wrap it for the day. Look for Kwan's video to follow mine, and we'll see you next week.